and welcome to yet another episode of the God is a Geek Retrocast. Once again, I'm your host, Lee Garbett, and joining me is my co-host, Robin Parker.
Ahoy, ahoy.
So already, as soon as we kick in, we've got the DuckTales theme, so we thought we'd get a bit topical as the Capcom have recently announced a remaster of this original game, so we thought we'd actually cover it for the Retrocast.
Yeah, and it's one of those few retro games which, I mean, a lot of fans would probably say you wouldn't need a remastering of because it's still so beloved nowadays, even to this day.
It is, considering it's a licensed property as well. It's quite an unusual kind of game. Most games of the time, as we said several times, if they were licensed, it was usually of poor quality, and in this case, I think it was quite a trailblazer in terms of quality. Yeah,
it's one of the games which still always appears in lists of great licensed titles, and you can really see why when you turn it on for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with many NES games, you'd probably say, well, it looks a bit like Mega Man, and well, there's a reason for that. It's because the artist on this game was in fact Keiji Inafune, the creator of Mega Man and the character and all the games following. So you can instantly tell his art style immediately when playing this game.
Yeah, I think many of the other team members who worked on the Mega Man series, like the other key personnel, also worked on DuckTales, and you can see that influence throughout the game from the way you can select your stages and approach the game in a sort of non-linear style. There's lots of little touches which make you think of Mega Man throughout the game.
Sure, I mean, if I remember correctly, there were even levels there where you picked up an item and you'd have to use it elsewhere in another area. So there were bits like that. It wasn't quite so linear as most games of the time were. Yeah,
because licensed games were generally phoned in. They could, as simple as possible. They just maybe use some graphics, maybe a bit of sound from the licensed property, but the game would. Very little thought would go into the game, whereas you look at something like DuckTales and the gameplay has gone before anything else in this title, for sure.
Certainly. I mean, this game was released in 1989 in America and 1990 the rest of the world. It also spawned a Game Boy version, again in 1990, which was relatively the same game, although it did amend some of the level layout slightly, just to make use of the Game Boy's very small screen. But of course, not only did Keiji Inafune work on the Mega Man games, as well as this, quite a few other Mega Man, alumni, I can't even say it properly.
Alumni.
Other people that worked on Mega Man games also worked on this one. So, for example, the game's producer, Takuro Fujiwara, also works on quite a few of the Mega Man games as producer as well. So it's quite. You can tell that quite a lot of the Mega Man guys worked on this one.
It's certainly got strong pedigree, and even when you first turned it on and you get the level select screen, I mean that's sort of reminiscent of when you get to choose which boss you're going to go after first in Mega Man, whether you choose to, which world you want to enter first of all. It's just very much the same idea, except Mega Man never had a pogo stick.
No, this was quite a good mechanic, really. It wasn't straight jumping. It was, as Scrooge McDuck, you had this little kind of cane, and you used it for kind of bashing blocks around. But the main use was kind of jumping around, as you can see, like with that pogo stick, which is quite a strange. It takes a while to get used to if you've played it. I've not played it in a long time, or just picking it up for the first time. It can be quite fickle at times.
Yeah, it's a weird little. It feels very strange, just like you say. And obviously, once you get used to it, it's like riding a bike. But I've even heard that for the remastered version, which Capcom are putting together, they're going to put in the same pogo stick controls which were in this version, but also have an optional easy pogo stick control where it's a bit simpler to pick up.
I imagine in that mode, I think possibly every jump is a pogo stick jump by that point. There are very few reasons to not use the pogo sticks. I mean, I find jumping high gives you a bit extra leeway in terms of some of the more difficult jumps in this game.
Yeah, I think it's probably just because sometimes you need to build up a bit of momentum by bouncing on several enemies and stuff. I suppose maybe the easy pogo sticks will just make that a bit more straightforward. Of
course, the aim of this game is, of course, Scrooge McDuck, he loves his money, and throughout the game, he's basically trying to collect as much money as possible, be it diamonds, bags of cash, the lot really. I think if I remember correctly, the ending, how it goes, is dictated by how much money you collected throughout the game.
Yeah, quite strangely for Game of the Time, there's 3 different endings, all dependent on how well you've done, how many of the treasures you've found, because obviously you go around the world to these different exotic locations, and you can pick. You're going after different treasures in each area, and if you find them all and complete the game with I think $10 million, then you get the best ending. But there's another 2 possible endings depending on your performance.
That's right. But this is a surprisingly hard game. Well, not surprisingly considering it's on the NES. Don't be fooled. This isn't necessarily a kids' game. As you've seen earlier, I have died quite a lot already. It's some of the levels can be quite difficult to navigate around.
Yeah, it's definitely not just a cheap kids cash in, but there's you can see just the amount of care and attention that's gone into the game, because all the different characters are recognisable from the cartoons. Huey, Dewey, Louie, Scrooge, all the bad guys. The brothers. I can't remember what they were called, but
The Beagle Boys.
Beagle Boys. That's it. So you can see on screen there. You can see the faces. There's a lot of detail in the sprites, considering how small they are. And it's just so much care has gone into the design of the game.
Yeah, and I think this game came out at a perfect time, really. I mean, obviously the DuckTales cartoon itself was very popular at the time, and it's quite unusual, really, that they've never tried to bring it back in any way. But in terms of this game came out in 1989, 1990. That was around the time of Super Mario Bros. 3, and what I'd probably say is the peak of the NES is where it was at its most popular. I mean, even though the SNES was only a year or 2 away, 1989, 1990 probably had some of the NES's best games.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Mario 3 just being out at the same sort of time as this, it's sort of platform gaming had reached its peak for the NES. So I mean, everybody wanted to put out a top platform title, so that everyone was competing, and DuckTales was one of the best ones available.
Yeah, I mean, as we said before, this is still a quality game. Really, it's still incredibly playable. Everything controls very well, especially given the time. All the levels are unique. There are unique. As you can see, like some of the even the enemies are themed for the actual level. So we're in Transylvania at the moment, and there are of course some mummies and other ghoulish beings around, and and minecarts.
Oh, I hate minecarts. Are often the bane of video gaming, but they're not too bad in this one.
No, there are not too many of them around.
No. But I mean, you say the game, is quite tough, but it's tough, but it's not cheap. It's not one of those one of the typical NES games where you can die cheaply and often. It's if once you learn the levels, you learn how to control Scrooge, then it's quite easy to beat it. It doesn't just kill you and throw you down holes and the controls don't hamper your progress through the game. It's a well-made game that is challenging rather than too difficult.
I mean, this bit where you see me die a few times, that's probably one of the few examples of it really kind of screwing you over, because it is quite difficult to jump out of those minecarts. But other than that, the rest of the game, it's relatively straightforward. The only thing you have to worry about are the enemies and the environments themselves. As you can see, we need a key to get in, so it automatically takes us to Castlevania, and we just have to find the key from somewhere. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting you sort of said Castlevania instead of Transylvania, because the level design here does look very Castlevania.
Oh, actually, that's just my subconscious. But yeah, I mean,
did it on purpose.
Yeah. Obviously, Castlevania being a Konami property instead of a Capcom one, but yeah, I guess the graphics-wise, it does look a lot like the first 2 Castlevania games on the NES. It's got that kind of style and that colour scheme. Maybe it was intentional.
It might have been a slight homage, seeing as how sort of crazy successful those games were on the NES. They were very much a huge part of the NES's life cycle, the Castlevania titles.
Certainly.
Whether you choose to like Castlevania 2 or not, it was still a big game.
Well, I think that one's probably another story for another episode, I think.
Exactly.
There I'm just trying to find this key at the moment. Some of the levels are actually quite tricky to navigate. They go in all directions, and there are hidden areas, there are dead ends, there are secret walls, teleports. It can be very difficult to find everything.
Yeah, it's back in the days when people used to rely on magazines for maps of levels and stuff. You certainly need it at times on this game, because you could become a bit of a maze if you weren't careful.
Of course, and I should have gone into that first mirror at the start to get that key, but I tended to go the long way around, which is a bit of a mistake there. So I'm just going to kill random slugs.
As you do.
Well, it is a NES licensed game, and it does have to be a few random enemies. They can't all be from the cartoons.
And they can't be anything which would cause any offence for you to be killing them either.
No, and I imagine this was, of course, during Nintendo of America's big censorship kind of era. I do believe they censored crosses and the like from the Transylvania level, and things like that. Obviously frowned upon by Disney as well. So you had the censorship coming from both sides. So
yeah, the designers probably had a bit of a headache trying to appease both parties on that front.
But I did hear that Disney's representative that dealt with this game was actually kind of tasked with ensuring that the game was of quality and not just faithful in terms of visuals or narrative. It was supposed to be a good game as well in Disney's eyes, and I think that's that's quite unheard of around this era as well. Is for the license holders to actually get involved that much.
Yeah, it's not a common thing, but Capcom did produce quite a few very good Disney-related games on NES and SNES. Like Mickey's Magical Quest, for example, is another one on the SNES, which was very good. But the strange thing was that on Sega consoles, Sega held the rights to all Disney properties, so they made their own Disney games on the Sega console.
Oh, yeah, that is right, and I'm sure we'll be covering one or two of those at some point in the future.
It's you don't get that at all nowadays, as I think we touched upon a couple of weeks ago. It's just you don't get quite as much variety in that respect as you used to.
No, certainly not. So here we've got the moon level, which is probably the most famous of the levels, just because of that wonderful theme music.
And you've got the duck bad guys who look a bit like RoboCop as well.
Oh, well, of course, there was it wasn't there the Gizmo duck character.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
So a cyborg duck on a unicycle style thing. I think he pops up in a few of these levels as well, along with Launchpad, who pilots the little helicopter that we saw in the Himalayas.
Yeah, it's good. They sort of fitted in all these different characters and gave them actual things to do. Like Launchpad does help you on several occasions when there's gaps which you can't navigate yourself. And Hugo and Louis are there to sort of help guide you along the way a little bit. It's just fun. They managed to fit in all these different characters from the series.
I think DuckTales on the NES, its legacy is that it really did kick off a lot of really, really good games based on Disney properties. There was on the NES itself. There was Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. There was Darkwing Duck, which was pretty decent, and again quite like Mega Man. There was a sequel to this game itself as well, which maybe wasn't as good as this game, but it was still a decent platformer.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was towards the end of the NES life cycle, so it didn't maybe get quite as much attention as it might have deserved anyway.
Of course, but and I think that the quality of Disney games, kept their quality as they went through to the 16-bit era as well. Capcom did take a few 16-bit games off of Disney, including Aladdin and the Mickey's Magical Quest games as well. So,
oh yeah, Aladdin was very easy, but still a great game.
Very, very good game. But yeah, I think DuckTales is it's very deservedly finally getting a remake. I think many of us wanted this to come out even in its original form on Virtual Console or anything like that, but to actually have a full remake, and one that's been dealt with by Way Forward, which is a very talented group of people there, and I think very suited for the kind of remakes that they had been doing previously. So
yeah, I think it's just a testament to the design of the game that gamers would have been happy with this game in its in its form, original form. But it's even better to see a nice HD remake to see what they can do with it and how they can improve it further.
Yeah. So I mean, that's DuckTales. I guess this summer we can play the remastered game, and hopefully it'll live up to the majesty of this wonderful NES game. But, so yeah, that's it for this week's God is a Geek Retrocast. Of course, you can watch all of our past, present and future episodes via the Retrocast playlist on the God is a Geek YouTube channel. You can also go on the God is a Geek TV channel on blip.tv, the God is a Geek TV podcast channel on iTunes, and of course you can visit us on the God is a Geek website at www.godisageek.com, where you can also check out all of our other fine podcasts, videos, news, previews, features and reviews. And of course, if you'd like to be regularly updated about the show and want to chat with us about anything retro gaming or Retrocast show related, you can also follow us on Twitter at the Retrocast, and of course we'd love to hear from you. So thank you for watching the God is a Geek Retrocasts this week, and until next time, keep it retro.
See you next time.